Committee. Yep. All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the House Environment and Transportation Committee, Wednesday, March 26th, starting about 3 hours earlier than yesterday. So we are in great shape. And we can start with Secretary Kurtz, who I believe is here for SB 258, Natural Resources, Fishing Licenses, and Stamp Alterations.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Josh Kurtz, Secretary of the Department of Natural Resources, here in support of SB 258. This bill really works on our non-tidal fish program. This is an incredibly popular fishing program for our recreational community all across the state of Maryland. And actually, so one of them is here today. I just wanted to thank Andy Grosco of Free State Fly Fishing, and really wanted to highlight one of the programs that they do that is part of what we're going to discuss today, and that's a youth trout fishing day, which was on March 22nd. And the program and the fish fees, or the non-tidal fish fee increases in this bill, allow us to continue to do our stocking program all across the state to ensure we continue to have a world-class recreational fishery, as well as work on some of the big challenges with invasives, such as snakeheads and blue catfish and flathead catfish. And so by continuing, by raising these fees slightly, and we worked through our Sport Fish Advisory Commission on the fee increases, and you have letters of support from many of those members, we were able to find a space that allows us to continue this program, continue to invest in our hatcheries all across the state to ensure that we have the non-tidal fish species, robust populations of them for recreational purposes and for the ecological purposes that they serve. And just so everybody is clear, this is also the cross file for HB 40. And thank you for the time. With that, I would request a favorable report on SB 258.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Any changes? Any questions? Any questions? I think the Vice Chair has a question. Did you have a question?
Thank you so much. Is this in the same posture as HB 40?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, this is a long list. I think this is your only bill, Mr. Secretary. But
correct.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We will turn to Senator Kramer, SB 375, Crimes Relating to Animals, Restrictions on Keeping Roosters.
Oh my, the gift that keeps on giving. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Ben Kramer here to introduce Senate Bill 375, which, colleagues, I believe is in the identical posture to House Bill 513. So unless you've got something for me, that's all I got.
Any questions for the sponsor, Delegate Morgan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Senator Kramer, it's a pleasure to see you again today.
It's always a pleasure to see you, Delegate Morgan.
And since you are my constituent,
yes, sir.
are you keeping chickens on your property down in St. Mary's County?
Well, you know what? With the price of eggs at the moment,
Yes.
we're working on hatching them just like all the other good folk down in St. Mary's.
We're very happy about this because you will be able to add to our local economy. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have
See you, committee.
We have Senator Washington, I think. Is she here? Great. Senator Washington, SB 42, Environment, Interjurisdictional Watersheds, Flood Management, and your delegate up here said I should take you right away.
Great. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you all. So there is not a House cross file, so I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and a little minutes to describe what's going on in the bill. I did not, given the time that we are in session, I did not have a panel, but you'll see that there's letters of support from like Blue Water Baltimore, Nature Conservancy, and some other organizations. For the record, I'm Senator Mary Washington. Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of this committee. I'm Senator Mary Washington, and I'm here to present Senate Bill 42, Interjurisdictional Watersheds Flood Management. Now, what Senate Bill 42 does is that it reaffirms and clarifies the designation of 4 critical flood-prone watersheds in sort of central Maryland: Carroll Creek, Gwynns Falls, Jones Falls, and the Herring Run. So interjurisdictional obviously means that they run across multiple jurisdictions, and that it also includes their headwaters and the tributaries as interjurisdictional watersheds under Maryland law. So I want you to know, because I think there's been some discussion out there, but why does this issue matter to me? You know, I grew up in Philadelphia, which had great parks, and also the Schuylkill River, and just have been very connected to the waters and the streams there. And that's part of why I've always been an environmentalist. I was a founding member of the Baltimore Commission on Sustainability and served as the chair of its water group. So that was back in 2000. And I spent 6 years at the Parks and People Foundation, where I led Clean Streams, Green Communities initiatives as associate director. During that time, I worked closely with hydrologists and foresters and scientists that were really committed to restoring our watersheds and looking at not only how local city, you know, like Baltimore, but how could the state and the federal government work together in restoring and maintaining our waterways. Then as a legislator, I've consistently supported and championed environmental protection. As you know, I serve on that committee. And most recently, I've been honored to join the Chesapeake Bay Commission with one of your members here, Delegate Ruth, a multi-state body committed to protecting and restoring the bay and its watersheds. So my commitment to environmental stewardship writ large and to ensuring that we use science and equity and climate resilience that continues to guide our decisions. And that leads directly to the work of this bill. Now, why this bill matters is that if we are going to be really serious about protecting the bay, we must prioritize the smaller waterways that feed into it. This body has done a lot of that work in the early 2010s, but there hasn't, you know, been a whole lot of update since then. Just as safeguarding the heart means caring for our capillaries and making sure that they're cleared and we're eating the right things, protecting the bay requires that we manage the tributaries, especially in flood-prone urban areas. The watersheds, oh gosh, I just realized I have my other colleague on the commission here, and chair of our delegation, former chair of our delegation, Dana Stein. Apologies. So the upstream streams and headwaters help, as you know, filter pollution, they support biodiversity, and they reduce downstream flooding. Our environment and the infrastructure are at risk unless we have consistent and collaborative watershed management. So simply, what does this bill do? And what doesn't it do? SB 42 does not create any new designations or impose any new regulatory burdens. The watersheds are already designated as jurisdictional under Maryland law and in regulation. I would reference Maryland Environment Article 5-503 and COMAR 26.1702.07 that already designate Carroll Creek, Gwynns Falls, Jones Falls, and Herring Run as interjurisdictional watersheds. SB 42 simply codifies the inclusion of headwaters and tributaries, but also it ensures that there's clarity and continuity by moving what we have in regulation into law. Now, there's been some back and forth with MD as they began to understand what I was doing and also the references to existing law. And there was, you've probably, I don't know if you've got the whole packet, but the most recent letter of information, they clarify and remove the issues that they were concerned about previously. So they have clarified to the counties that previously were under the impression that this would impose additional financial burdens that it does not, okay, require such burdens. Their existing responsibilities are already outlined in Maryland law and regulation, and that remains unchanged. Before I close, I want to address what I anticipate may be what's raised in the opposition. A new party has been introduced, and I want to say, again, clearly, if you understand my background and you understand, perhaps look at my record, and even most recently a bill that I have in fighting to get out of committee with one of your other members, I am committed to affordable housing. I am committed to safe, affordable housing. I am committed to housing that improves the community, allows individuals to live lives, and I would never, ever participate in anything that would block that sort of thing. So SB 42 does not prohibit or delay any housing development. It does not create any new regulatory requirements or change any existing permitting processes. It simply reaffirms current designations. This bill is not about blocking housing. And I explained from the beginning what this bill is about. It is about thoughtfully managing flood risk across our jurisdictions, and that we can build affordable housing and protect vulnerable communities. These goals are not in conflict. They are, in fact, connected. So to be clear, I support increasing access to affordable housing in Baltimore County and across the state. However, housing must be sited responsibly, and all considerations of environmental impact and community should be considered. But that would all be future determinations. Does not impact anything in the past. So in November, and I'm wrapping up, Mr. Chair, in November, I met with the executive director of the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership to express my concerns about some proposed development, and just wanted to express very clearly, my position here. And also look for opportunities where we could be aligned in our goals of providing affordable housing. And I explained generally that it's really important that in placing housing that we take into account environmental conditions that could potentially hurt already overburdened communities. Well, unfortunately, my concerns were dismissed as, I quote, environmental nonsense, unquote. That conversation underscored why SB 42 is necessary to ensure that flood vulnerability is not dismissed, but is formally recognized and accounted for in how we manage our watersheds. SB 42 reinforces our agencies, what we already know, what communities have long experienced, and what science demands, that we must plan with the full watershed in mind, and that this legislation helps Maryland lead with clarity, act with forethought, and prioritize the safety of communities most at risk. I thank you and appreciate your consideration, and I formally ask for your favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator, and welcome to my fellow member of the Chesapeake Bay Commission. And so, if I understand right, you're not actually changing anything. This is already in regulation, but you're codifying it in law.
It's in both places. So it's, again, that's something to take up. And as part of the commission, looking at all the different places in code and regulations, we refer to waterways, and that's a larger project, but this one seemed to be a very straightforward one to take what's both in law, both in regulation, and put them together. So yes, so the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. And are these the only interjurisdictional watersheds? Are there others? And if so, why these four?
Well, these four were designated long ago in law. And I think I mentioned that in 2010, lots of different were required to do plans, et cetera. There was a lot of flooding in Baltimore, the Baltimore sort of region, and making those connections. So a lot of the interjurisdictional complex sort of evolved around that time. So at the time, these are the only ones, but MDE has the ability in law to declare others. In fact, someone asked, could they add Potomac and some other flood-prone areas? And I said, well, maybe that's another bill, but I wanted to go with what's currently in law and not do anything new.
So if you added additional ones, then you would be adding additional requirements that are not already in.
Well,
Because-
those would, yeah.
Right,
those
because
would
these
have
four are
floodplains,
already.
Yeah, but also, I think this committee also knows that, under the Clean Water Act, the 1976 Clean Water Act, almost all jurisdictions have to have some type of water management and flood management plan. So again, these are longstanding requirements, and most jurisdictions have.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Okay, I do not see any further questions. Thank you, Senator. Because this is not a cross-file, we have additional testimony. Unfavorable, Tom Cole for MAHC.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Tom Cole on behalf of the Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition. Our members would request a unfavorable report on Senate Bill 42. It is our read of this bill, and I believe also the read of the Maryland Department of the Environment, that this would impose additional regulations and impositions on new housing and would not simply codify existing regulations. And even more concerningly, from our members' perspective, it introduces new definitions which are still ambiguous in terms of how they would ultimately be applied. And while I do not in any way believe it was the intent of this bill, it would directly impact a project, Red Maple Place, that has been the subject of litigation all the way up to the Appellate Court of Maryland, that would then have additional regulations imposed upon it. I know this committee has a number of housing bills that has already been heard before, and you understand the regulatory burden that housing already faces. That includes compliance with stormwater management regulations, including stormwater quality regulations. And so they exist under current Baltimore County regulations, Frederick County regulations, and regulations imposed by the Maryland Department of the Environment. And I noticed in the sponsor's testimony that there was an indication that this would not impose any new regulations. And if that were the case, why would the law be necessary? This law does create new regulatory burdens, and they are ambiguous. It also imposes a new expense with a fiscal note noted by the Maryland Department of Environment, which would require the creation of a new position with MDE to design regulations and have them be applicable. The last thing I'll note is that when these new regulations are created, they stop everything in its tracks. So projects that are currently underway would be frozen until these regulations could be developed. So we would ask for an unfavorable report on Senate Bill 42.
Thank you. A question from Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you're saying that this does create additional regulatory burden, and I guess I'm not understanding how that does that if they are already required to have the flood management plans and everything under current regulations.
So this creates new definitions under the stormwater management laws for interjurisdictional watersheds and headwaters. That is something that is addressed by existing locality stormwater management regulations. It's not something that is necessarily addressed by MDE outside of their evaluation of a county's compliance with the stormwater management regulations. So where we sort of, our concern comes up is that it is ambiguous in terms of what actually will be generated from this, but we are not comfortable at all with the suggestion that this would not generate new regulations. What they would be, we don't know. You all pass the laws, the regulators create the regulations, but it's likely that with new definitions, this would create new regulations on housing development.
So if there is, in your view, ambiguities, have you met with the sponsor to discuss those and see if there were amendments that could clarify it?
We have not, and I apologize for that. This was something that one of our members recognized when there was the cross-file and brought it to MAKE's attention, and so the sponsor is correct that we are recent to this bill.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Much. And just follow up on Delegate Ruth's point. It sounds like there is nothing that you could be placed in this bill to make the change, to make you go from favorable to, unfavorable to favorable.
No, I would say that any way
clear.
that this is amended, it would create ambiguous regulations that none of us could predict what would result from that.
And you mentioned a specific housing or a project or whatever that is. How does this directly affect that project? And is that area prone to potential flooding?
So that would be Red Maple Place.
Red Maple Place.
And it would be in one of the interjurisdictional watersheds. And it already has significant stormwater management that it is accomplishing. It is not, it is difficult in 2025 to talk about whether or not some place is prone to
Sure.
flooding because of the storms that
Right.
we now experience. But it is required under state, local, and even federal law to manage that. The federal law is implicated because Red Maple Place is funded in part by low-income housing tax credits, which have additional floodplain requirements that are imposed on the project. So it is addressed many times over in that, but this would impose new regulations that it may or may not be able to comply with.
Understood. And when did the project begin?
Oh my gosh. The project began, I believe, all the way back in 2019, but I
So
would need
still
to.
no building since then?
That's correct.
Wow, okay. And then there was when you talked about definition, are you talking about this headwater stream definition?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. We love to welcome back committee alumni, so let's bring up Senator Folden on behalf of the Frederick County Senators, openly carrying handguns, bow hunting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, esteemed colleagues, good to be back in ENT. It's my third time this session, I believe. Wow. Before you today is Senate Bill 449, deals with Frederick County and Washington County's bow hunting and the openly carrying of handguns while bow hunting. DNR rules divide Maryland hunting zones into two regions, Region A and Region B. Region A covers western tip of Washington County, Allegheny, and Garrett counties. Region B covers the rest of the state. Allegheny, Garrett, Washington, and Frederick counties have bear hunting seasons. The state extended bear hunting season to Washington and Frederick counties in 2016 due to increasing bear populations. Maryland law permits archery hunters, in current Maryland law, permits archery hunters in Region A, that of Garrett, Allegheny, and the tip of Washington County, to carry a sidearm for bear protection while deer hunting. Similarly, situated archery hunters in Washington and Frederick counties in Region B, that covers the rest of the state, are not permitted to carry a sidearm for bear protection when deer hunting. Maryland DNR has advised that it interprets the law to preclude hunters possessing valid concealed carry permits from carrying a sidearm when deer hunting with archery equipment. The largest bear harvested in the state of Maryland weighed 650 pounds during last year's bear hunting season, and it was in Frederick County. A Frederick County hunter harvested what was then the largest bear in the state in 2020. And it was 537 pounds. Frederick County has seen perhaps the only 2 bear attacks in the state, but we have seen them. In 2016, November, a grandmother was mauled by a black bear near Gambrel State Park in Frederick as she sustained injuries to her head, face, arm, legs, which required 80 stitches. And I'm familiar with this because I was on that scene. She was trying to protect her granddaughter. In September of 2020, a woman was bitten by a bear near Myersville, where I live, while walking her dogs, and also sustained injury. Although bear spray is recognized as a capable bear repellent, its effectiveness can be hampered by the elements, or even totally negated by certain elements, such as rain, can significantly limit the dispersion distance and quickly dissipate the spray. An adverse wind may not only limit its effectiveness, but could result in the person employing the bear spray being incapacitated by the bear spray being blown back into their eyes, nose, and respiratory system. As someone that has been sprayed by pepper spray before, I will tell you, it is not an enjoyable experience. It will incapacitate you. The law allowing archery hunters to carry a sidearm for bear protection is a sound rule based on logical policy to protect these hunters in the areas with significant bear populations. So really the nuts and bolts of this piece of legislation is that it would change DNR from doing this by an A and B region even though it segments one county in half, and would just allow the rest of that county and Frederick County. So everything from Frederick County west would be allowed and permitted to do this, and that's for their personal protection. So with that, there is a delegation letter and of support from Frederick County, from Washington County, and the Sportsman's Caucus. And also, I think there is one amendment, and that was just to change it, as you said, Mr. Chair, to the Frederick County senators instead of the Frederick County delegation on this bill itself. With that, I would ask for your favorable report on SB 449, and I'm happy to take any questions.
We have a question from Delegate Guyton.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thanks for bringing this to us. I do have a question for you because I have family members who hike a lot in national parks where there are grizzly bears.
Yeah.
So they are more concerned about attacks because grizzly bears are very dangerous and have a record of hurting people. We're talking here about black bears, correct?
Well,
And Frederick?
yeah, this is about bow hunting, and then for the, let me make sure I don't want to misspeak. I don't know that it says specifically black bears, it's bears.
Are there grizzly bears in Maryland?
I don't believe so.
No.
I don't believe so.
Right, so really, the only bears I mean, there may be other
Yeah.
types of bears, but the only ones I'm familiar with, because we have them in my area as well, are black bears. And yeah, I understand that if these bears were considered dangerous, it seems like a reasonable alternative. But my understanding is black bears don't really attack people, and there haven't been any attacks that are fatal in Maryland. Do you know of different
Well,
information?
I can only tell you that the 2 attacks in Frederick County in my district, and I
they
can
were-
tell you that those absolutely happened, and they were unprovoked, and they were actually near their homes. So these aren't even out in the woods where they're out hunting another animal. These actually happened in their driveways.
So this bill wouldn't really have affected that, but from what I can, and maybe if Department of Ag or somebody like that, if we're able to talk to them later, we can find out how big of an issue that this really is, because we've certainly not had anything like that in our areas.
Yeah, sure.
Or anywhere else I've lived.
I'm happy to,
Okay.
I'm happy to have them chime in, but like I said, this isn't creating a new law. This is already in effect in the western part of the state. This is just moving the rest of Washington County and Frederick County into that. As the bear population has grown, we've seen it move eastward.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. We will turn to Senator
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hester, SB 871, Department of the Environment, Community Water and Sewerage System, Cybersecurity Planning and Assessments.
Thank you. It's my first time over here. Thank you for your consideration of Senate Bill 871. For the record, I'm Senator Katie Fry-Hester, and I'd just like to thank Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of ENT, including Delegate Ziegler, who's my delegate. So you have actually heard Senate Bill 871. It was presented earlier by Delegate Harrison. Just to refresh your memory on what this bill does, it strengthens cybersecurity oversight by designating MDE as the lead agency. It also mandates cybersecurity incident reports to the State Operations Security Center and requires risk assessments and cybersecurity plans for water systems. This was part of MDE's National Security Plan, which they presented to EPA. We did add some amendments since you've heard it last. And what the amendments do is it really brings MDE, MACO, MML, MDEM, and DO-IT. They're all now in support of this bill, and we've managed to reduce it to the need for one PIN, which Budget and Tax has agreed to include. And so what the amendments do is that they clarify that some of the responsibility within the Department of Emergency Management falls on the local emergency managers rather than the state agency itself. It clarifies what DO-IT will do versus what MDE will do. It narrows the definition of covered community water systems to those that serve over 3,300 customers. It also clarifies that a zero trust approach is a journey. So you're moving towards having zero trust as opposed to achieving it at a particular point in time. And finally, it directs MDE to work with federal entities to identify and access resources available from the federal government. I believe when you heard this before that there was a gentleman from the U.S. Department of Defense, Mr. John Garska, who is the Director of Cyber Warfare with the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense Platform and Weapon Portfolio Management. He is particularly interested in this bill because he's concerned about the safety of the water systems for our military bases here in the state of Maryland. And so in follow-up, he joined the call with other stakeholders, and he has committed to a number of things on behalf of the DoD, including an operational technology cybersecurity workshop involving the Maryland government personnel in some of their cyber war games around the topic. He is looking for grants or potentially even willing to pay more for cyber hardened water around the facilities. He's willing to fund a subject matter expert to help out the Department of the Environment. And it's with these kind of free resources that he's committed that we've been able to bring down the fiscal note in addition to some of those other changes. So with that, I would ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 871, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions on this bill? Delegate Baker.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, the Senate fiscal note versus the House fiscal note, and I just heard you reference the fiscal note that brought the numbers down. So what are the true fiscal note numbers?
I actually haven't seen the House fiscal note, but I was told that it would be down to just one pin in the Department of IT.
To one, I'm sorry, to one what?
One person, one pin.
Does that mean a new hire?
One new hire, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Okay, we can move on to SB 117, Senator Hester, Environment Bay Restoration Fund Septic System Upgrade Program. Are you also a member of Team Septics?
I did have a little emoji on me the other day, but no. Thank you very much for the question. I was asked to sponsor this bill by the Department of the Environment. You've already heard it because Delegate Stein has the exact cross file. The Senate and House versions passed in the same way. And so I would just stop there with my remarks and ask you for a favorable report.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good to see everyone.
I think we have Senator Brooks, with us. And Senator Brooks has a bill that I saw, SB 315, Maryland Environmental Service Membership of Board of Directors Alterations.
Very good. How you doing? Okay. Okay. Sure. All right. Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you on Senate Bill 315. This is a cross file of a bill that's passed out of this committee, House Bill 344, sponsored by the Speaker Pro Tem, Delegate Stein. This bill would remove the state treasurer from the Maryland Environmental Service Board of Directors and replace that seat with the Secretary of the Maryland Department of Planning. This version is slightly different from the one passed out of this committee. You added 2 members of the General Assembly, non-voting, might I add. MES agreed with you on that, and I am here to say that I concur. So with that, I urge a favorable report, and I'll entertain any questions if you have.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Brooks. Any questions on this bill? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think we have the Acting Commerce Secretary, Secretary Coker, with us. SB 253, Controlled Hazardous Substance Facility Permit, Research Facilities, Chemical Warfare Material Requirements.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Harry Coker, and I am the Acting Secretary of the Maryland Department of Commerce, and I am here today to present Senate Bill 253, a departmental bill that was introduced on behalf of the Department of Commerce. I'm joined by Jen Lahat, our Managing Director of Policy Research and Government Affairs at Commerce, as well as Ed Hammerberg, a technical specialist and supervisor in the Land and Materials Administration at the Maryland Department of Environment, and they'll be able to assist with any questions that you all may have. This committee heard House Bill 62 at the end of January, but the bill was amended by the Senate, and I'm going to focus my remarks today on those amendments. After the hearing a couple of months ago, the Senate convened a work session with Commerce, MDE, and the Chesapeake Physicians for Social Responsibility. During that session, they worked item by item through concerns raised on the bill as it was introduced and developed the consensus amendments that are on the bill in front of you today. The amendments actually made the bill stronger, and the Senate Bill 253 passed out of the Senate unanimously. I also know that the Commerce team has met with many of you to discuss these amendments, and I thank you all for taking the time to discuss the bill with us. As amended, Senate Bill 253 modifies language in the environment article to provide exemptions from certain statutory restrictions of the incineration of chemical warfare material only if the incineration is done for research, development, or demonstration purposes at a research facility as designated by the United States Department of Defense. Senate Bill 253 authorizes MDE to issue a research, development, and demonstration, or RDD, permit in accordance with the bill. The amendments directly connect the RD&D permitting process and requirements with the controlled hazardous substance facility requirements. This ensures that vitally important environmental protections and public health and safety measures remain in place when this RD&D work is being done. These protections include near real-time emissions monitoring, public participation in the permitting process, in all aspects of the RD&D permitting process, even if not explicitly stated in the bill. The amendments also require the facility to report annually to MDE on operations at the facility related to this research, and at least once every 2 years to complete an assessment of those activities on the local ecosystems, public health, and air quality. Aberdeen Proving Ground is Harford County's largest employer, and the Chemical Biological Center at APG, where this work will be done, employs approximately 1,200 people in highly skilled, high-paying jobs. The Department of Defense has been seeking this change for several years in order to allow the CBC and its employees to research and develop new technologies to be able to neutralize and destroy chemical warfare materials in the field. This is, excuse me, this is important and impressive work being done right here in Maryland, and it's being done to protect U.S. troops as well as people around the world in countries where chemical weapons are being recovered. In conclusion, Senate Bill 253 provides a targeted exemption to allow further research and testing to be done here in Maryland to advance our nation's security. Aberdeen Proving Ground has a proven track record of doing this work and producing these technologies in ways that protect the workforce, protect the community, and protect the environment. And the Department of Commerce is proud to support their work. The Maryland Department of Commerce respectfully requests a favorable report on Senate Bill 253, and we are happy to answer any questions that you all may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Delegate Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I'm up here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing the bill and for explaining it. I did speak with your representative in my office yesterday, and I have been reading carefully through this bill and the regulations that it refers to, and I wondered why you don't want it to be explicit in the bill that you have some kind of emergency management plan for evacuating the area if something goes terribly wrong. Can you address that, please?
Yes, we are on board with having explicit requirement for a contingency plan. The facility already does have a contingency plan built into their process, but we are happy to include the requirement for a contingency plan in the bill. I think the the discussion back and forth may have been over the level of detail and just making sure that it's not overbearing, but that it absolutely still meets the requirement of a contingency plan.
An emergency management plan, correct?
I'm not familiar with the semantics, but a contingency plan should certainly be in alignment or almost the same as an emergency management plan.
Okay, I appreciate that very much because I'm working on an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Lehman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think Delegate Jacobs had lit up before me, so I thought you would call on him first. Okay, thank you. So thank you for being here. I am very skeptical about this legislation, I'll be honest, and have a lot of concerns. And that's because I've talked to a number of people who worked at one time on site and on other things, not on the technology you're talking about or the actual activity. But so one question I have, and I realize you're not with MDE, and I don't know if anyone is here, but I wondered what kind of in-house expertise MDE has. I cannot imagine we have folks at the state level who are experts on chemical warfare, and that concerns me when things potentially go wrong. So not just for purposes of the permit, but if things really go sideways.
I'm not sure.
Thank you, Delegate. For the record, I'm Edward Hammerberg. I'm in the solid waste program in MDE, and I'm responsible for hazardous waste permitting in that position. So as far as the expertise, we have the engineering expertise to evaluate plans, and then if there are questions concerning specifically chemical warfare materials, we have access to federal experts and
So you have access to the experts, but you're not trying to say there's anybody within the department with this level of expertise on nerve agents and these other, solid waste is one thing, but this is something very different, clearly.
Well, we do, there is some expertise. We have, I believe, at least one person I know of who formerly was employed in the chemical weapons section at Aberdeen. So we do have some of that expertise. Then we've had training, we've had over the years where we've been interacting with our counterparts in other states and with the EPA
so,
experts.
In terms of the types of agents we're talking about and where they come from, so when we had the discussion the other day in the Environment Subcommittee, I pressed the question about where this material is from, because my earlier conversations, it was implied to me by various people that this was material already on site at Aberdeen. And then the answer was from MDE eventually that, yes, some of it would be from off-site. So are we talking about other states? Or are we talking about material coming from other countries?
Well, I think a lot of that depends on the nature of the threat that the military will be facing and what they're attempting to achieve through their research. And it's a fluid situation. There may be materials in other countries or from other terrorist groups that they need to investigate and evaluate. So it's potentially the case that some of that material in limited quantities could be brought to Aberdeen for investigation to determine what the appropriate methods are of treating it.
And could that include the newer generation of chemical weapons that Russia specifically has developed outside of the 4 traditional types? Or do you don't know until you get, or we won't know until that material actually arrives at Aberdeen?
Well, no, I think they would approach us and coordinate with us. So, but I'm hesitant to speak on behalf of the Department of Defense as to what threats they're dealing with, because that's kind of outside of my specific area of expertise.
Okay, and then my last question, Mr. Chair, is just that, and I don't need an answer right now, but I would like to, and I met with your representative from Commerce about this treaty that everyone specifically keeps referring to, this treaty that I gather is like a World War II era treaty that names Aberdeen. That's what I was told. I would like to actually get a copy or be given information about how to get a copy of that treaty and what it specifically says about Aberdeen Proving Ground and why it is somehow uniquely situated or set up to handle a program like this going forward that obviously wasn't contemplated whenever that treaty was written. People keep referring to a treaty, and I have yet to see anyone produce what that document is, who were the signatories, and et cetera. So I want that as follow-up before I could even consider voting on this legislation. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry. No, I just, unless they have the treaty with them, that is follow-up, that I want to see, you know.
Well, I would know, the treaty that's been referred to is known as the Chemical Weapons Convention, and that was actually the treaty that required the initial destruction of the stockpiles of chemical warfare agents that the United States had, and led to the destruction of the mustard agent stockpile at Aberdeen earlier in this century. So it's a fairly modern treaty. It's not dating back to World War II. Under that treaty, each signatory country is allowed one site in which they can have limited quantities of chemical weapons for research purposes on defensive measures and treatment methods and so on. So, and Aberdeen Proving Ground is the designated site in the United States under that treaty for those activities to take place.
Right, but it requires Maryland's cooperation to go forward, obviously.
We have authority permitting of all federal facilities, so if it's anything involving hazardous waste, then we have the permitting authority and oversight authority.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for clarifying. And if there is a write-up of some sort, please send it to Delegate Lehman. Delegate Jacobs.
Madam Chairman. First of all, your representative came to my office and answered a lot of questions for me, because I know this hearing was back in January. It was not left in a good place that day, and I think a lot's been done with amendments, et cetera, to improve the bill since then. But this Aberdeen just above my district, so it's very concerning to me, as you know, and I remember when all the mustard gas was there and the disposal and stuff of that. But can you tell me if MDE and the Army Alliance has signed off on this?
Yes, yes, we are as amended. We are not. We're supporting the bill as amended.
And the Army Alliance, yes, is also in support. And they were in support from the beginning, are still in support as amended, yes.
And CBC, is everybody's on board?
Yes.
Thank you. That's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here and for presenting this bill. So we talked about this in subcommittee, and I'm glad to hear you say, sir, that you are willing to add a contingency plan or emergency management plan to the bill, because that's one of the issues that MedCai had, and it sounds as if that might soften MedCai's opposition to the bill, so I'm happy to hear that. But my question is, if this bill doesn't pass, given that you're required to have these materials in the facility via the treaty, if this doesn't pass, what will happen? What's the alternative with these chemicals?
So thank you, Delegate. So there is work that is ongoing currently at the CBC, and they will continue to do the work that they are doing at the CBC, whether or not this bill passes. This bill will allow them to work on new technologies that they would like to research that will include thermal processes that right now they are prevented from being able to incorporate in their research. So if the bill does not pass, they will not be able to pursue the new technologies that they would like to research right now. I can't say with any certainty what that would mean if they cannot pursue those technologies, that research that they would like to do, but that is the one definitive thing, that they cannot pursue that research if the bill does not pass.
And what about they can't pursue it because they can't incinerate, they can't destroy the chemicals, or the warfare mechanisms, is that right?
Correct. So they are prevented from using any incineration, and so due to the broad definition of incineration, it's thermal processes that they cannot use at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in regards to what you just said, Jen, they are currently, and Mr. Secretary, welcome to ENT.
Thank you.
At this point in time, they're still doing a lot of work at Aberdeen relative to chemical weapons, am I correct? And they will going to continue to do work in chemical weapons in the future. So we're not going to pause process. What we're simply looking at now is the thermal piece of the element to make it work.
Correct.
And is it fair to sit there and say at this present time, the contingency operations, the emergency plan that Delegate Healy refers to, is currently in place for everything that we're currently doing?
Ed, do you want to?
Yeah, that's correct. They, under Army regulations, they have requirements for these plans, these chemical agents, incident plans.
So the COOP that we call contingency operation plan that we call it in DOD, the COOP's in place, the emergency operation process and plan is in place. To your knowledge, has there ever been any issue at Aberdeen where there has been an emergency at the CBC?
Well, I'm sure that they've had, they're very closely alarmed for anything, so anytime an alarm is tripped, then that triggers their internal.
But I'm saying as far as you know, you've never been notified there's been an incident that has caused any kind of mass casualties
No,
or
nothing
anything like that?
that would have had an off-site impact or even outside of the facility, inside of the laboratory.
So the ability of the Army to control their operation and make it safe and secure, not only for their people, but also for the residents, is, in your mind, satisfactory at the current time? And if the thermal thing was going to be enacted as you're asking, the contingency plan, the emergency plan would be, I'll use the word sufficient, because it's going to be an added process to an already existing condition.
Well, and as part of the permitting process, we would have requirements for a contingency plan specific to that operation. So that would be an added layer upon the internal Army procedures where we'd have the state authority over that. So
it would almost become automatic if the bill passes, that MD would be then involved in the next step.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Morgan. Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just looking this up quickly, there are 193 states which are a party to this treaty. Have there been other countries that have done significant work on this? I mean, are we starting from zero, or are you aware of, because it requires the destruction of chemical weapons. It also prohibits their transfer, which I won't get into that, but it seems like a bit of a sticky wicket. But, you know, as I say, is there already a significant body of knowledge about how this is done, or are we starting from zero?
Well, I think there's a significant body of knowledge from what the existing chemical agents are, the standard agents, but I don't necessarily have all the information the Department of Defense has, but what I've gleaned is that they are concerned that there are new developments all the time, and they want to be in the position of being able to evaluate those new challenges that they would be facing and come up with the appropriate countermeasures.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you so much. Seeing no, one question. I was going to close it out. Delegate Naraki, no problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. I do have a question. So I represent northeastern Baltimore County. As a matter of fact, I even have a portion of Aberdeen Proving Ground in my district. I'm just curious why there hasn't been more outreach to Baltimore County. I'm literally downwind and even have some of the base in my district, and I've not had one meeting at all. No one has reached out to me at all. So is there a reason that we're kind of not having those discussions with Baltimore County and only with the Hartford County folks?
There's no good reason for that. And we will come see you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Look at that progress. Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, that ends the bill hearing for SB 253. Calling now SB 964, Dorchester County Senators, Dorchester County Well and On-Site Sewage Disposal Activities Privatization Program. Senator Mounts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, it's an honor to be here. I'm presenting
Senate Bill 964. It is identical to House Bill 1124 as passed by the House unanimously. House Bill was amended in committee. Senate Bill was amended in committee. Senate Bill 964 was approved unanimously also. Would you like me to explain the bill? No, sir. Excellent.
Thank you. That ends the bill hearing for SB 964. Since I saw him come up, let's call in the longest bill hearing. Senator Sumner, SB 73, Chesapeake Conservation Corps Program renaming.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. And for the record, Senator Simon Ayer presenting Senate Bill 73, revisions to the Chesapeake Conservation Corps program. I wanted to thank the Chesapeake Bay Trust for supporting this effort and working with me. You may be surprised to see a Republican putting in a bill honoring a Democrat. But despite our differences, we are a legislative family who all work to help our Marylanders. In fact, some of my closest friends down here are Democrats. We just disagree on the floor, and then we go out and play tennis. When I entered the General Assembly in 2007, Speaker Bush and President Miller were leading the chambers. Between a very short time in 2019 and 2021, we tragically lost both leaders of the Senate and the House of Delegates. In 2020, the House of Delegates and the Senate rightly honored former Speaker Bush by creating the Michael Aaron Bush Sports Fund in Maryland law, knowing his passion for recreational sports. I proudly voted to support that legislation and Speaker Bush's contribution to the General Assembly. In a similar fashion, this bill works to honor former President Mike Miller in our statutes. Senate Bill 73 passed with the entire support of the Senate, as seen by the unanimous vote and co-sponsorship. This bill does two things. One, it names the Chesapeake Conservation Corps program after Mike Miller Jr. and adds climate to the program title. This bill is about honoring a fellow member of the General Assembly who gave far more to it than he ever asked in return. Mike served both in the House of Delegates and the Senate and became the longest serving state Senate president in America. But instead of focusing on his accomplishments, I want to share a little interaction with him. I served with Mike for 13 years, and when I entered politics, I was completely a novice and probably a thorn in his side for the first several years. However, over time, I learned to respect him greatly as I matured in the General Assembly. Even if we disagreed on issues from time to time, we became friends in the political arena, to the point where I could ask for his advice and he'd freely give it. Early on as a gesture of goodwill, I started sending him a nice little Christmas gift box, you know, the ones with cheese, nuts, and candies, to their house. A couple years later, he teased me and he said, "I just want you to know I always had my wife test them first to make sure you didn't poison them." He was a character. One of his many initiatives he championed 15 years ago was the Chesapeake Conservation Corps program. There have been many additions and tweaks to it, but by and large, it's still the same program he created. Most recently, its duties and funding were updated in the Climate Solutions Now Act. So one of the things we're changing in this bill is to better reflect the program's purpose by adding the word climate to the title. The other change, of course, is to add Thomas V. Mike Miller Jr. to the title, as it depicted his love for the environment and education. And for these reasons, I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you so much. You can
Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, Delegate Healy, who's on our Core Advisory Committee, and members of the committee. I'm Casey Wetzel, Vice President of Programs at the Chesapeake Bay Trust. A little background on the trust. We were created by the General Assembly in 1985 as a 501c3 to empower communities on the ground to be part of the recovery of our local natural resources. Chesapeake Conservation Corps, established by the General Assembly in 2010 and administered by the Trust, places young people ages 18 to 25 in year-long stipend-supported terms of service at not-for-profit host sites. Corps members work on a project to advance their host organization's missions in the realms of watershed restoration, energy conservation, forestry, climate change, agriculture, and K-12 environmental education. They receive life and career skills training, and they learn to lead their own independent projects. For the past 15 years, the Corps has played a critical role in increasing access to green careers and developing the next generation of environmental stewards. Since its inception, the program has received nearly 1,900 applications from young adults eager to make a difference. Currently, the 19th class of the Corps includes over 50 members, underscoring the continued demand for this program. The program now has 428 alumni, with 70% of alumni securing full-time green jobs immediately following their service year, and 30% of graduates hired by their host sites in each year, something we're very proud of. The Climate Solutions Now Act of 2022 further expanded the core program by increasing the focus on climate change-related projects and directed that the projects take place within communities disproportionately affected by climate impacts. Renaming the Corps will honor the legacy of Senate President Mike Miller, whose leadership in the Maryland General Assembly was critical in the establishment of the program. It will also bring greater visibility to the program's work, helping to inspire future generations of young people to pursue careers in conservation, climate change action, and sustainability. We're proud of the Corps and grateful to Senator Simon-Ayer and Senator Ferguson and Senator Jackson for putting forward this renaming legislation and for the committee's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll call up the virtual witness now, Melanie Miller, Miller Partnership Consultants, LF.
Okay, start my video. All right, gotta love technology. Thank you all so much. I know many of you all. Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the committee. I'm Melanie Miller and the daughter of Senate President Thomas E. Mike Miller. I'm honored to join you today to really talk about, my father, his love of the Bay, and frankly, I learned a little bit of history about him. So always good research. Well, I tell you, as I sit, before the House, I've always been on that Senate side, and I'm happy to be back in this House side. But I learned a little bit about what he did in the House was in 1971 through 1975. People don't realize he was elected to the House of Representatives. And it was so impactful because we have to remember the Chesapeake Bay Foundation was created right before he came into the House. And so it was a natural fit for him as a businessman to talk and work about the Chesapeake Bay. And he loved the Bay. And, the actions with safeguarding the Bay ecosystem, he supported the livelihood of communities dependent on the resources of the Chesapeake Bay. He worked, and I've learned he worked closely with Richard Langford. I don't know if anybody wants to learn more about him, but he was the chairman of the Commission of the Chesapeake Bay Affairs in 1970, impactful. And then he worked at that time. He was the Speaker of the House was Mr. Lowe. And so I've learned about that as well. But let me tell you, I'm sorry, I just went off a little bit, but he dedicated, as you know, he has his history in the Senate, 50 years in the Senate, and he worked to create that Chesapeake Bay Trust. He loved education. He loved teaching the students about the Chesapeake Bay. And I tell you, the last years of his life, he dedicated himself. He lived on that bay, but he would look out and said, "Can you believe that view?" And then he loved collecting those shells. But to see that bowl of shells that he collected, but he always gave more time and money to establishing oyster sanctuaries and creating that next group of leaders he talked about in the Chesapeake Bay Trust. So I ask you, thank you, Senator Simon-Ayer, and thank you, committee. Please, on behalf of our family, we ask you to support this bill, and thank you for the honor to represent you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. It's so good to see you, and thank you for sharing this honor for your father. Appreciate that. Anyone have any questions for the senator? No. Delegate Baylor.
Thank you. Hey, Senator. Yeah. On the bill, firstly, I started as a spy for Senate President Miller, sitting behind you in EHE, so I'm really excited about the bill. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you for your service. I think we all read the news that you're not planning on running for re-election. So I just wanted to, who knows if we'll have you here next year. So I just wanted to formally say thank you for everything you've done and for the veteran community and a lot of other priorities. So thank you.
Thank you. If I could say one more thing. Delegate Long wanted to speak on this, but he's over in JPR. But I just wanted to put on the record he's very supportive.
Yes, he was another senator to him. Seeing no other questions, that ends the bill hearing for SB 7-3. We'll now go to SB 8-9, Department of the Environment, Notification of Veteran Status.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Simon-Ayer presenting Senate Bill 89, and this is Department of Environment Professional License Veteran Notation. And I wanted to thank the Department of Environment and also the Department of Veterans and Military Families and advocates on this consensus legislation. This bill allows veterans to have a veterans notation on their professional license. And some of the key aspects of this, many of you know the MVA has the capability of putting a veteran's notation on their driver's license. This is modeled after that. One of the key differences, though, is this is optional, whereas the MVA program is mandated. And I worked with the departments over the interim, and what this allows having to be an optional is that some of the licenses can start immediately, some can do it later when their software is upgraded, and it gives them flexibility how to do it. And if some don't work quite right, they don't have to participate. So they love the flexibility with that. But if they do it, I don't know if that came out right, but if they do it, it sets up the framework similar to the MVA program, where the application asks if the veteran wants to have it on their professional license, and if they do, they consent, and they have to consent to allow the department to provide available benefits and services that the state and federal government have. Just like we're changing laws this year, a lot of them don't know what we're doing down here, so it's a great way of getting the information out, just like they do with the MVA. As far as the MVA, they're only reaching about half our veterans, so we have almost 200,000 that aren't on that program, so there's a great need out there. One thing I've worked on is veteran suicide. As you all are aware, we have far too many suicides, 18 to 21 annually in the United States every day. And one of the key factors of that is isolation. So by having a notation on your license, people will recognize it and thank you for your service. They will also have other veterans notice it, and then they start talking and getting them involved with that. And again, they share the benefits of that are available to them. But not only that, there's potential financial benefit, okay? Because people like to hire veterans, and they like to rehire them, and some of them even like to give bigger tips. So it's not required, but it's a nice thing. So in summary, this consensus legislation, it has no fiscal impact, no opposition, and supported by the departments, and I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you so much. Delegate Ruth has a
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the bill. And I just wanted to, isn't it so? I wanted to make sure you were aware of the exhibit on the third floor of the House building of paintings of veterans who have died by suicide. They're
Yes.
Incredibly moving paintings.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Senator, is David, is that Draghi's? Is he here?
Yes, I think he's up in ECM.
Okay.
They're in full support from the Maryland.
No problem. I just wanted to
Yeah.
give him an opportunity to speak. Seeing no more questions, that ends the bill hearing for SB 89. Senator, if you don't mind, can we go to 282, and then we can go into your other ones since it's been heard here before.
Senator Brian Simon Ayer, Senate Bill 282. This is a cross-file of House Bill 494, Delegate Allen. It is not identical. As this committee added an additional amendment, I thought it was a great amendment. So I'd ask you conform the Senate bill to the House bill. And with that, I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you so much. Seeing no questions, that ends the bill hearing for SB 282. We'll go to SB 103, boating accidents, reporting requirements, property damage. Senator, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Senator Simon Ayer presenting Senate Bill 103, report revisions of boating accidents. I want to thank the Department of Natural Resources for their support letter on this consensus legislation as it came from them working on some other legislation. It simply provides additional information on an existing boating accident report. Specifically, it requires to document if there is damage to navigational aid markers, lights, and identifiers during an accident, a boating accident. If DNR knows about damage to a navigational aid marker or other things, they can respond quicker to get them repaired and assist boats. This will help with the safety of other boaters on our waterways, and it also is information that they would like to provide to the U.S. Coast Guard. There's no opposition, no fiscal note, and supported and requested by the department, so I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Senator. And there is no cross-file, correct?
That's correct.
That is correct. Any questions for the Senator? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for SB 103. We will go to SB 162, Agriculture Department Authority over Identification, Inspection, and Sale of Cantaloupes, repeal. Senator, you got a lot of explaining to do. Let's go.
Very diverse, very diverse. Senator Simon Ayer presenting Senate Bill 162. Yeah, we had a couple smirks on the Senate floor on this one. I wanted to thank the Department of Agriculture and also the Farm Bureau for their consensus legislation. This was a recommendation by the Department of Agriculture with no opposition and no fiscal note. You may ask, how in the world did you come up with this bill? I was going through legislation, and I came upon this, that Anne Arundel County was the only one exempted from the cantaloupe section. So I said, if it's good for everybody else, why should Anne Arundel County be exempted? So I was actually going to put Anne Arundel County back in. And when talking with the Department of Agriculture, they said this portion has been obsolete for over a decade, and we would prefer you just to remove it completely. Well, I look back 50 years, I can't find out why we had a specific one for cantaloupes, but it's there. Again, it's consensus legislation, and right now what happens is the USDA now oversees this process. And, you know, I always say it's nice to reduce a number of laws when it's appropriate, and then this is a clear case. We don't want to have confusing and contradictory laws. Again, this cleans up our laws. There's no fiscal impact, no opposition, and recommended by the Department of Agriculture, and I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you so much. Well done. Fascinating. We should probably find out why in general it was, but it's.
I worked with the library, and they just, who knows?
I don't know. Somebody took I don't know, an opportunity maybe. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, what about honeydew melons?
They're all under the USDA. I don't know if Rachel Jones is here. She was.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, I didn't know if you were serious. Okay.
See no other questions. That ends the bill hearing for SB 162. Now going to SB 168, Confined Aquatic Disposal Cells Construction Moratorium.
Okay, thank you. Senator Brian Simon-Air for Senate Bill 168, Confined Aquatic Disposal, which is CAD, moratorium. And this has come a long way to get to this point. Last year you had bill hearing on a task force for this. Basically what a CAD is, for those who may not remember, you go into the waterway, you dig up a big hole, you take the sand out, you use that for beneficial reuse, and they put some other lesser quality material back in it for dredging purposes. This is a kumbaya bill now. We've got the Port Authority supporting it. The letter should be in there. We've got the Chesapeake Bay Foundation supporting it. And so what it's basically saying is, let us finish the work group. We're going to pause any new construction for 4 years. And I worked with the port, I worked with the communities, and as I say, it's all kumbaya now and everybody's happy. We've had a tremendous relationship with the Port Authority over the years. We have one of the dredge facilities on our land, and we've been working with them. This had created quite a stir, and this is a way that we can bring everybody together. And now there is no opposition and everybody supports it, and I would ask for your favorable consideration. Took a while to get there, but we got there.
Well, good for you. I love the persistence. Any questions for the senator? Okay, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for SB 168. Thank you for
Thank you so much.
Seminator show. We've got a couple other people here, so I just want to go quickly in order so I don't forget and you don't forget. So next we'll have Delegate Mounts, Senator Mounts, then we'll have Senator Carrozza, then we'll have MDA, then we'll have Senator Bailey, and then we'll have MDE. If that's helpful. I'm sorry, it's Carrozza, sorry, Senator.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Boyce and members of the esteemed Environment and Transportation Committee. For the record, Senator Mary Beth Carrozza, representing Maryland's coast, that's Worcester, Wycomico, and Somerset counties. And I am here to present Senate Bill 946, which is a bat conservation bill, which is why I wore my bat tie for you all today. And I wanted to remind you, the House cross file is your esteemed colleague and friend, Delegate Jay Jacobs. That bill has passed the House unanimously, and my bill, the cross file on the Senate side, has passed the Senate unanimously. And just to remind you, Senate Bill 956 would allow the Department of Natural Resources to establish a permit process to allow for the incidental takings of the, and we have pictures here, of the northern long-eared bat, the tricolored bat, or the Indiana bat, and the eastern small-footed bat. And this process would include the approval of a habitat conservation plan, and it would ensure a balanced approach to both conservation and forest management that is already practiced at the federal level under the Endangered Species Act. And just to remind you, this process is not new to Maryland. 2 other animals are allowed incidental takings in our state, the Delmarva fox squirrel and the Puritan tiger beetle. And these conservation efforts have resulted in the Delmarva fox squirrel being removed from the endangered species list of December in 2015. Again, this is a bat conservation legislation. I want to thank the Maryland Department of Natural Resources and the Maryland Forest Association for working with us on this bill. It's a measured and fair approach promoting long-term conservation of these endangered bat species while ensuring necessary land management activities in Maryland's forests, which is very important to our state as well. So I thank you for your kind attention and consideration, and I ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 946.
Great, thank you, Senator. Any questions? All right, great to see you.
Good to see you. Thank
Let's move
you.
on to a very patient Senator Bailey, SB 23, Natural Resources State Boat Act Auctioneers.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Ms. Vice Chair, and distinguished members of the committee. Senator Jack Bailey, representing St. Mary's in Calvert County. For the record, talk about Senate Bill 23. It would exempt the auctioneers from the requirement to obtain a dealer license to auction a boat in the state of Maryland. This bill is identical to House Bill 425, sponsored by Delegate Todd Morgan. It passed your committee, passed the House of Delegates. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 23. I thank you for your consideration. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions on SB 23? Okay, we'll move on to SB 186, Senator Bailey, Natural Resources Invasive Blue Catfish Pilot Program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and distinguished members of the committee. Senator Bailey, District 29, St. Mary's in Calvert County. For the record, this bill would establish the invasive blue catfish pilot program to curb the spread of the invasive blue catfish in the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries. This bill is identical to House Bill 446, sponsored by Delegate Todd Morgan, as it passed this committee in the House of Delegates. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 186. I thank you all for your consideration, and I stand for any questions.
Any questions? All right, let's move on to SB 363, Senator Bailey, Oyster Shucking House Loan Program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and distinguished members of the committee. Senator Bailey, District 29, St. Mary's in Calvert County. Senate Bill 363 makes alterations to the Oyster Shucking House Loan Program available through Marbitco. This bill passed is identical to House Bill 397, sponsored by Delegate Dana Jones, and it passed this committee in the House of Delegates. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 363. I thank you for your consideration and stand for any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Okay, it's going to get more complicated. SB 335, Senator Bailey, Natural Resources Canada Geese Bag Limits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and distinguished members of the committee. I'm going to talk to you for a minute about Senate Bill 335. This is a goose conservation measure to require the bag limit for all Canada geese to be uniform across the state outside of Western Maryland during the migratory Atlantic population Canada goose hunting season. This bill is cross-filed with House Bill 892, sponsored by Delegate Jacobs, which you heard earlier this session. In your bill file, I've included information about the Senate's amendments to this bill. The bill now exempts the portions of Western Maryland that is currently in the resident zone, Allegheny, Frederick, Garrett, and Washington counties, as well as Carroll County west of Route 97 and 31. This is consistent with the lines not only in the state of Virginia, but also the state of Pennsylvania, where the boundary through Carroll County continues across 97 as it crosses the state line. This bill now effectively extends the protection of these migratory geese in this narrow corridor where they are otherwise protected on both sides by the existing boundaries in Maryland and Virginia, as indicated in the map that you have in your bill file. This bill also now has a 5-year sunset to revisit this issue based on the data that the state receives. It is critical that we protect these migratory Canada geese to prevent a repeat of the 7-year moratorium that stopped goose hunting throughout the state in the 1990s. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 335. I thank you for your consideration, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Delegate Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Bailey, thank you so much. I have gotten so many calls from Charles County. Somehow they feel like you're picking on them. Now, you have exempted several jurisdictions. Would you consider exempting Charles County?
So the Atlantic population geese come from Canada, and they fly down to Charles County. They fly all over Maryland. Maryland was the goose hunting capital of the world. We had over a half of 1 million goose hunters every year in Maryland. Now, how I would answer your question is this. In 1995, because the Department of Natural Resources and the Fish and Wildlife Service did not address the hunting population in Maryland, we did not properly regulate the Canada geese. We went through a 7-year moratorium. If I could take you back to the Baltimore Sun from August 13th, 1995, when they made that decision, we have had to make this decision to close the hunting, knowing what we do in Maryland directly influences the number of birds we send back to the breeding grounds. So we know through history that this impacted. You also have in your bill file a report from the Department of Natural Resources where they give you informational testimony. And if you look at that testimony, you will see that they admit in that area of Charles and Prince George's County that a percentage of the Atlantic geese that we are trying to protect are killed in that area. So that is a long way to say, Delegate, that we are not taking anything away from your constituents get to hunt 80 days at a 5-day season. Because the population is reducing in the Atlantic population, next year the whole rest of Maryland is going to have a 30-day one-bird season. And the only thing this does is it takes 30 days in Charles County and says you can still hunt. But when these geese are flying around, if they happen to fly, and excuse the expression, into this death zone, right, then those geese would have the opportunity in Charles County for 5 geese to be killed at that same time that they could in any surrounding jurisdiction only be allowed to have 1 killed. So in the protection of these geese, I would say no.
No.
We do not want to, but we are not taking, obviously sitting as the chair or vice chair of the Sportsman's Caucus, it is not my intention to take anything away from the hunting community. I am simply working for one state, for one Maryland, for all the geese, and being able to try to protect that. So we're not taking anything away from your constituents. You see this. We do this in migratory game birds, migratory fish, right? We see an area that's negatively impacting a population, right? We have to step in and do something, and that's what this bill is doing.
If I may, Mr. Chair. So will this bill affect the amount of geese you can kill in your county, in St. Mary's?
Well, negatively, I don't know how to answer that. It potentially could. Because if we protect the breeding population, it will affect all the other counties.
But let me rephrase that. Is the same restriction on Charles being put on St. Mary's County in this bill?
The same restriction already applies in St. Mary's.
Already applies, or it will apply under this bill?
So 2 years ago, the hunters in St. Mary's County could have hunted 45 days and taken 2 geese each day for that 45. What is proposed next year in St. Mary's is they could hunt 30 days and take 1 goose. That's it for the whole year in St. Mary's County. Same geese flying back and forth between St. Mary's and Charles. In Charles County, next year you will have 50 days in Charles County where you can shoot 5 geese a day, and you will have 30 days that you can only kill 1 goose. So, if you did the numbers, you could, in a sense, if you were a Charles County resident versus St. Mary's County resident, you could kill 250 more geese if you were Charles County than if you were St. Mary's.
Great. Now, Senator, do I look like I know what I'm talking about?
I'm trying to do the best. I'm trying to do the best that I can to show you that I'm not trying to take anything whatsoever away from any constituent that you have.
I have one more question. I've got to get reelected. I understand that DNR put out their program for this year, right? And they didn't make this change. Now, why do you think DNR is agreeing to this change at this point?
We get data all the time, and I know that there is new tracking data that is existing with satellites where we're tracking the geese to see where they are going, and I'm pretty sure that you will see that there are some geese that came from Canada that were harvested in Charles County in this area. And that's why I think there's a change that all of a sudden, back in 1995, when we had the moratorium that came in affected Charles County and St. Mary's County the exact same way. Right? There was no difference between those areas, right? When they said a moratorium to protect these geese, the science was we protected those geese whatsoever. Now, as we all know, anybody that goes to a high school or anybody that goes to a golf course, we all know that resident Canada geese are problematic, and we want to control them, right? And there's no doubt about it. You have resident Canada geese in Charles County, and I want you to control those as with every tool that you see fit. And I would be a big proponent of raising the season for those times. The only thing that I want to have happen is if a goose leaves the state of Virginia, if they leave the state of Pennsylvania, if they fly across that Potomac River, and they happen to come down in that one area of Charles County, I want them to be treated the same as if they were everywhere else.
Oh, my God. Without a visa, of course. But, okay, thank you so much for being a sport. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Delegate.
All right, Delegate Jacobs.
So there were some amendments added after the bill left here in the Senate. And there was also some additional information, which I think you just touched on a little bit, but I want to make sure that people understand it, that you talked about satellite tracking of the geese. Well, we like shoot from the hip here. So actually, there were geese harvested in Charles County that had radio collars on them that proved that they were Atlantic population geese. Is that correct?
That's correct. They were the same geese that you have in your area.
But we didn't know that when I did my bill hearing. That information hadn't come out yet, correct?
That's what yes.
And the other thing is, it's a conservation piece of legislation because 2 years ago, as you indicated, 45-day season, 2 geese. This year, 30-day season, 2 geese. Next year, 30-day season, 1 goose. So there's a natural decline in the limit, and what we're trying to do is help protect these geese to get them back up north so they can lay eggs, raise some little ones, and repopulate, as they say. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Delegate. The whole thing is to protect that breeding population.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, thank you very much, Senator. Appreciate having you over here. I think we have a representative from Senator Gazzoni's office. Thank you. For SB 849, Professional and Volunteer Firefighting Innovative Cancer Screening Technologies Program.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Favor Obasio, and I serve as a legislative fellow in Senator Gazzoni's office. Today, I am here to present Senate Bill 849, Professional Volunteer Firefighter Innovative Cancer Screening Technologies Program funding. This bill proposes increasing funding to a higher amount for the Professional and Volunteer Firefighter Innovative Cancer Screening Technologies Program. The bill seeks to authorize the governor to allocate $3 million, up from the current $500,000 to this program. Additionally, it authorizes the Secretary of Health to use up to 20% of the program's funds to support research centers in collecting, analyzing, and processing outcome data to assess and improve the effectiveness of the cancer screening funded by the program. Studies have confirmed that firefighters have higher incidences and death rates for many cancers that are not routinely screened for. And the goal of the Firefighter Cancer Screening Program is to reduce cancer mortality among professional and volunteer firefighters. The cross-file of this bill, House Bill 757, was heard in this committee on February 26. Senate Bill 849 was passed unanimously by the Budget and Tax Committee, the Finance Committee, and the Senate. And with that, I will ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 849.
Great, thank you. Any questions on this bill? Okay, thanks for coming over. We appreciate it. I think we have Rachel from the Maryland Department of Agriculture for a series of bills. We can start with SB 226, Maryland Farms and Families Fund Purpose and Use Alterations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was a departmental that did have a cross-file. This committee passed it. We are very grateful. It simply allows us to streamline the fund, and instead of it only being able to be awarded to a nonprofit as it is an existing statute, it gives us the ability to award it also to a governmental entity. And with that, we'd ask for a favorable report.
Great. Any questions on this bill? Okay, let's move on to Senate Bill 240, Department of Agriculture, Maryland Agricultural Commission, and Young Farmers.
Yes, okay. So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, likewise, thank you. This committee passed this bill as well. It passed in the full House. This simply allows us to alter the membership of the Maryland Agricultural Commission based on recommendations from the committee as a result of their 2024 strategic plan. And with that, we'd ask for a favorable report.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. We'll turn to SB 249, Pesticide and Pest Control, revisions to pesticide applicators law and repeal of obsolete provisions.
Excellent. Again, this committee and the House passed this bill as well, the cross-file version. And so this allows us to conform existing statute to updated EPA regulations as of 2023, requiring a certification plan that specifies who can apply restricted use pesticides in the state of Maryland. And with that, we'd ask for a favorable report.
Any questions on this bill? Okay, we'll move on to SB 264, Plant Disease Control Nurseries Inspection Certification and Licensing Fees. And this seems really familiar because I feel like I had to defend it yesterday. So I think this is already passed in the BRFA, right?
Yes. Yes.
Anything else you need to add?
No, just that, again, the Senate B&T yesterday conformed to what House Appropriations recommended in including this in the BRFA. And so we would ask that the House would do the same with this particular bill. And
that would be do nothing with this bill because we passed it in the BRFA,
yes.
Right? Okay, great. That concludes the bill hearing. Thank you for your patience, Rachel.
Thank you.
Do we have someone from MDE here? All right, Jeremy D.L.S. Baker. SB 265, Environment Reservoir Augmentation Permit Establishment. Oh, Alex Butler, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Alex Butler, representing the Maryland Department of Environment, here to present Senate Bill 265. This is the cross-file of House Bill 25, which this committee in the full House passed over a month ago. Very simply, takes water reuse pilot program, turns into a standing program. 3 amendments, only one of which is new to the committee. First, technical changes. Second, very reasonable reporting requirement attached by this committee. And third, clarifying the pilot project participant does not have to do another duplicative feasibility study. They've already completed one as part of the initial application. With that, ask for a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I apologize for my very bad vision. Are there any questions? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing. I see we have Senator Quarterman For SB 980, at least Kristen might correct me, that's not Senator Quarterman? Just kidding. Senator Quarterman, SB 980, Natural Resources Maryland Heritage Areas Authority Funding and Grants.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, for the record, Senator Paul Quarterman, District 2, representing Washington and Frederick counties. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 980. You guys heard this bill. There was a cross-file that was heard here previously. Specifically, what the bill does, basically as drafted, is permissive. It is not a mandate, but allows the current cap to be lifted for our heritage areas from $6 million to $12 million. Again, this is authorizing language that does just allows funding, however, does not require that additional funding. You'll find extensive support from all around the state in regards to this bill. The cap was last lifted in, I believe it was 2017, which I believe, Mr. Chairman, you supported at that time. It was unanimous in the House, so it's we look for hopefully a favorable report this time around as well. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. That concludes the bill hearing, but we have Washington County SB 580. Are you presenting that as well? Public safety buildings used for agritourism.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Senator Paul Quarterman, District 2, representing Washington Frederick counties. This is a local bill. You guys heard the cross-file, which was House Bill 749, passed this committee 22-0, 137-0 on the House floor. We will request a favorable report as well on this Senate version.
Any questions? Okay. Thanks for coming over, Senator.
Thank you.
That concludes the bill hearing. Is Linda from Senator Henson's office in here yet? SB 722, Department of the Environment, definition of ecological restoration.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Vice Chair and committee members. For the record, I'm Linda Hannafin-Bonner, representing Senator Shanika Henson from the 30th District of Anne Arundel County, who served as a co-sponsor with Senator Augustine for Senate Bill 722. This is a cross-file bill with 1155 with Delegate Dana Stain as well. The purpose of this bill is to clarify terminology within the Maryland Department of the Environment. It has a significant support of environmental advocates to do this, and it's particularly defining the term ecological registration within the state regulations. Because it does have significant support, we urge that you give this bill a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, thanks for coming over. Is Spencer from Senator Giles' office here? All right, come on down. Natural resources, vessels, carbon monoxide warning labels, Matthews Law.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Spencer Dixon, Legislative Director for Senator Don Guile, here to represent SB 1028. This bill honors Matthew McHale, a young constituent from District 33 who tragically lost his life in 2016 due to carbon monoxide poisoning on a boat. Per the fiscal note, the bill would not directly affect state government operations or finances, and the bill is the cross-file of HB 1322, sponsored by Chair Piña-Melnick. This committee reported that bill favorably with amendments, and the full House passed it overwhelmingly. While matching amendments to the Senate committee were submitted, further amendments were added there and on the Senate floor, putting the two bills into different postures. However, we have worked with the chair's team and the affected stakeholders to come up to a final consensus. I have submitted those amendments pursuant to the consensus to this committee, which is SB 1028/773/723/1, and Chair Piña-Melnick will be doing the same in the Senate committee. The two bills should be in the same posture following the adoption of these amendments. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on SB 1028.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Delegate Lehman, are you going to present SB 425 since you're the cross-file, Environment, Coal Combustion, Byproducts, Fees, Coordinating Committee, and Regulations?
So good afternoon, Mr. Chair and esteemed colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Mary Lehman, asking your favorable report of Senate Bill 425. That is the cross-file of House Bill 902, the coal ash legislation I presented to this committee a few weeks ago. The House and Senate bills with amendments worked out with MDE match exactly. The Senate bill came over in time for the crossover deadline. The House bill is actually on the Environment Subcommittee agenda today. As a very, very brief refresher, coal ash is produced from the burning of coal and coal-fired power plants. It contains too many toxic chemicals to list, but suffice it to say they are harmful to the environment and human health. The bill would ensure monitoring and cleanup of coal ash sites in Maryland. It continues even if the Trump administration rolls back those regulations that were published in May of 2024. The regulations have now been officially paused for further review by the new administration. An amendment delays the required date by which MDE must adopt the EPA coal ash legacy site rule from December 2025 to December 2026. It also provides MDE with the authority to go beyond that May 2024 EPA final rule if necessary to protect human health and the environment. And finally, it creates a statewide coal combustion byproducts coordinating committee with citizens from the impacted community. Thank you. I hope you will give Senate Bill 425 a favorable report.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. That concludes the bill hearing and all the bill hearings for today. Before we do subcommittees, we're going to vote tomorrow after our hearing, so just keep that in mind. Keep an eye out for a list from Trish. It's a few straggler HBs and an awful lot of cross files and a few other things working their way through the subcommittees. We'll start with Chair Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe HRP and Environment are already scheduled to go later, so MVT has a very, very short list and will be very, very fast, and we're going to start at 4:20.
Chair Holmes.
Housing and Real Property at 5 o'clock.
Chair Stein.
Environment Subcommittee at 6 o'clock.
Everybody good? All right, see you in subcommittees. Thank you all.